It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, it's on again. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast on the last day of our working week. Yes, once again heading towards another weekend. And did you have a successful week in real estate? Plenty of offers were made, many negotiations had, some winners and losers like any week, others just observing the market, and possibly you deciding whether or not now is the time to sell. You see, we talk about different cities running at different speeds. People's property journeys are all over the place in terms of different speeds. And if you are right in the middle of your property journey at the moment, we would love to hear from you. Our email address, myrealestatePodcast@gmail.com. Well, it is a Friday morning, July the 11th, as we take you into Sydney. Where patiently waiting is Margaret Lomas from Destiny Solutions. Good morning to you, Margaret. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, a week in which we had plenty of real estate conversations. The RBA decision has, fair to say, dominated the talk around town. It's a great cafe talking point. Interesting views shared by professionals in the know, and even economists in some quarter I felt were panicking over this pause by the RBA. I saw one economist claiming that Tuesday's hold could depress price growth in real estate moving forward. So is there a little bit of an overreaction, do you think?
I don't think it's so much an overreaction, and I definitely think there's going to be an impact on the property market, but it's not necessarily one that we don't want. Since COVID, property prices keep on behaving in a way that in the 50 years before that they hadn't behaved, which is to basically, first of all move as one. Prior to that, we would have Sydney booming, maybe Perth sitting flat for many, many years, Adelaide going up a little bit every year. But since COVID, if there's a property boom, quite often, all of the states are all moving together and most of the capital cities moving together in that boom. The problem that has come out of the Reserve Bank leaving interest rates on hold this time, pretty much every economist said that they were going to cut rates, and that was the expectation. And people were gearing up to be able to take that rate on board and then either start or continue their property searching. Because if you think about it, some people might have been just waiting for that interest rate cut to make it a little bit more affordable in terms of their mortgage. And when it didn't happen, it was a shock to everybody. And I think what it's done now is that it's made people not trust anyone. I mean, they already didn't have a lot of faith in the Reserve Bank because the Reserve Bank went and raised rates after they'd promised not to for years. And then we have all of these economists saying, oh, yes, we're going to get an interest rate cut. So now we can't trust the economists either. And I think what that will do is it will make people at least pause and have a little bit of a think and wait 5 weeks until that next decision and see whether or not rates really do cut in 5 weeks, which is what the Reserve Bank suggested that would happen, and to see whether or not they can actually trust anyone.
Yeah, well, let's wait and see how that all sort of pans out. Now, let's have a look at the block 2025. For the first time in the show's history, contestants on the block are going to be building their homes from scratch. They arrive in Daylesford with only the frames erected, and from that moment forward, they're responsible for completing a reasonable size house, 346 square metres on a 2,300 square metre block. Here's my question. Will people be able to, do you think, handle a new build given the chaos that has been shown for so many years with these renos that they've done?
I'm going to be honest, and I've never watched an episode of The Block, which might surprise some, given that property's my thing. What I do know about The Block, and I do actually know the creators of The Block, I've known them both for a very long time. When they first started The Block, it was a pure renovation show. They sent people into a block of units. They asked them to renovate, and much of the work was actually undertaken by the people who were renovating. So by the contestants, they did most of the work themselves. So you had to have a little bit of nous and be a little bit handy because it was very hands-on. A little bit like when MasterChef first began, and you got really people who were just home cooks who could cook a good lamb chop, came in and did their best cooking, and then the winner was the winner, Julie Goodwin, as we know. And then both of those shows changed dramatically to suddenly be, first of all, you needed to have a fair amount of skill to become a contestant on that show. So on The Block, you needed to have a fair amount of skill. But the biggest change came in the team behind The Block. So we then started to really see these contestants become more project managers rather than hands-on. So they had ideas, and they might have been pretty good at coming up with great decorating ideas, but they started to do less and less of the actual hands-on work themselves, and people would come in and do that for them. So they're directing other people to do the work. The team of The Block, or the team behind The Block, was relatively small when it began, with a few tradespeople there. And now it's become an entire engine in and of itself, where you've got a massive big team who come in and carry out the actual work. And that's actually become part of the show as well, understanding that team and seeing how they're managed as well. If they're doing a new build, don't be mistaken and think that they're going to be in there framing up themselves and doing all that sort of thing. They're not. It's just a bigger project for them to manage now than it was before.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I've seen a few of the episodes, but hey, I am not somebody that will sit and watch any of these series. I do find, and they're good observations of what you're saying, it's just become so formulaic. And I wonder whether or not The Block is still relevant for people interested in property tips and information on, how to do these renos, etc. Or is it just TV reality drama about personalities and ratings, which of course the producers are gunning for?
And look, if I can compare it to another show again, Married at First Sight began as a fairly simple format where people got married, they went and lived at his house for a week, then her house for a week, and then decided if they liked each other enough to stay together. Now, for the drama of the program, they throw them into a unit block where nothing is real. They give them a life that isn't real life at all, but then focus on the behaviour of the contestants. And because that was such a popular format, we saw shows like The Block begin to evolve to be the same thing. And it does become much more about the behaviour of the contestants, the blow-up, the argument. All of those things need to be focused on. So when people watch that, they're seeing a lot more drama unfold, and they become connected, I guess, to the contestants and the ones they like and the ones they don't like. And there's always a villain. I don't know if you've noticed that. There's always a villain, and the villain's usually the female, and then she's going to cause all of this drama. What you get now from The Block is you might view the final product of, say, the bathroom or the kitchen and think, oh, that's nice. I might try and create my bathroom or kitchen to look like that. But I don't know that you get actually any how-to tips on how to go about making these things happen. Because again, it's the professional tradespeople who are carrying out the actual work, not so much the contestants themselves. You see a little bit of footage of them looking like they're helping out and looking like they're building some things, but it isn't really them. It's really this professional team, and they're just being used as labourers. And so I don't really think that you're getting the tips that we used to get from the early days, where the focus was more on the how-to and the what-to rather than how it looked at the end and whether it was nice looking or not.
On the spectrum is another one, but there's all sorts of different things that you can watch, but probably a lot more authentic.
Every morning from 6 a.m. across Australia, We deliver you the latest property news, commentary and predictions from Perth to Cairns and from Melbourne to Brisbane, 7 days a week.
Yeah, and just having a look at the prices that I mentioned over the last 10 years, you have a look at a Sydney, they're at a minus 1.1%, still sitting there at 61.6% rise. But my goodness, you look at a Brisbane, over 91%, Adelaide over the last 10 years, 93%. Perth at 55, 86. Hobart, you kind of quietly forget about them. And regional New South Wales, absolutely on fire, 97.5%. Some big moves there across 10 years.
Yeah, we have seen some big moves, and really most of that growth is really kind of that past 5-year period, particularly when you're thinking about those cities such as Brisbane and Adelaide and Perth. You know, we've seen all of these markets see strong growth in recent years. And if we separate out the figures there, you were talking about our dwelling prices, if we separate it out for houses and units, this is where you start to see the real difference in property type performance. So when you look at house prices in Brisbane and Adelaide, they've increased by over 100% over 10 years, almost like 110% in a 10-year period.
Every week, unravel the real estate market to help guide your real estate journey.
I do want to circle back to Daylesford, where the Block 2025 is happening, 90 minutes out from Melbourne, described as a dreamy tree change location. So it's going to be an interesting spot for this particular series.
Yes, it will indeed. One of the things that I do know about the spots that they choose is there's no really thought that goes into it in terms of, will this area be a good investment area? Sometimes they've pulled that off and it's been an area that's been a good investment. When I say that, I mean an investment in the property, a property that will grow well and have a lot of demand on it. Daylesford is probably not that area this time around. So it isn't necessarily an area that we're going to see anytime soon suddenly boom. It's not an area we should all be rushing to. It is a beautiful area and it's very much a tree change, and they've managed to really maintain that feeling about the area so that it's very villagey. And when you go there, you feel like you've escaped the world, and it's cute, and there's, you know, great little shops and things like that. But in terms of its investment potential, it's definitely not on my radar as an area that you would buy in because it's suddenly going to grow. And I don't think that having the block there is necessarily going to give it that kind of exposure to suddenly make it an area that everyone rushes to. And I don't think the people who live there want that to happen anyway. They like it the way it is. They like it to be more tree changey and a little bit unique. And there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens down there, but it isn't the kind of place yet that is close enough to Melbourne to then get that overflow growth that you get once you start to see standard everyday suburbs begin to break their boundaries and get overpopulated. Then the next suburb becomes the one that grows, and then the one after that, and then a bit more land gets acquired by the council, and then they develop a little bit more. That sort of thing happens in standard everyday suburbs with, 3-4 bedroom homes and families. It doesn't happen in unique areas like Daylesford. And I don't think they want it to happen either.
Great stuff, Margaret. As always, looking through your real estate perspective. Have yourself a great weekend coming up, and thanks for your views this morning once again on the Real Estate Breakfast.
Wonderful. I'll talk to you soon.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations, and supercharge your knowledge base with us.
Provided we stay on track with our inflation, which that's what we're looking to do, then there is opportunity for interest rates to come down. The question of housing prices, of course, is nothing we can't do anything about, and that's a whole story for governments in particular.
Yeah, so trying to tame inflation is the role of the RBA versus the cost of the housing going up. That isn't the role of the RBA, but one conflates into the other, which is where you get that damned if you do or damned if you don't comment, Leanne, coming through from the governor. Probably some frustration.
Well, and it's true, right? Typically, when interest rates go down, prices do go up. That is the reality of it. And she's absolutely right. It's not their role. And we have talked about lack of supply for years now. And the government's own Housing Supply Committee are saying that we're something like 262,000 properties behind for this year.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.